I wonder about when you all have been brave. You know, what has been given you the impetus to be brave? When have you been able to summon up the courage that you've needed? Today, my church celebrated what we call Heroes Day. And we always do this around Halloween or All Saints Day kind of time. We don't dress up scary like this, but we are celebrating the lives of those who have gone before. So we might dress up like this. Lives of those who've gone before in faith and great examples of how to live lives that honor God. And one big person, one big hero in the Bible is Ruth. And she's a bit of an unexpected hero. Um, she wasn't a king, she wasn't a warrior, she wasn't a prophet, she didn't do miracles or have amazing words from God. She's also a woman, which is the minority in the sort of catalogue of heroes in the Bible. Basically, it seems that all she really did was to accept the hand that life dealt her and then made the best of it, and wonderful things came of it down the track. You see, the thing that's remarkable about Ruth is not that she was a person with amazing skills or God moments or like visions or historical events. The remarkable thing about Ruth is her character. We honor Ruth because of her loyalty, her courage, her humility, her resourcefulness, her risk taking, and her resilience. This is a remarkable woman of character, worth studying and worth emulating. The interesting thing about character is that it's most evident when things get tough. It doesn't take much character to do the things that you enjoy, that don't cost you much, and generally are immediately rewarding. But it's when the chips are down that your character comes through. The chips were really down in this story. We start with a famine in a town called Bethlehem. Ironically, that means the house of bread. So they're having a famine in the house of bread. And Naomi and Elimelech head off to Moab. Now let's get our heads around what the Israelites thought of Moab. Moab was the enemy. In the era of Ruth, Israel had been at war with Moab. You might remember the donkey story where Balaam the prophet is on his way to help Moab and his donkey talks to him and stops him. And Balaam ends up cursing Moab 3 times. There's another story in Judges about Ehud the prophet. I love this one, Eglon, the king of Moab. Ehud is left-handed, which means that when he approaches the king and when he was searched for his short sword, which is strapped to his thigh, because he was left-handed, they actually went for the wrong thigh when they searched him, and they looked on the wrong side. So when he got private time with King Eglon, where they think he's unarmed, he said, "The Lord has a message for you." And Eglon says, "What is it?" And Ehud says, "This." And he whips out his surprising sword and plunges it into the king's fat belly so much that the fat closed over it. And then Ehud leaves, and no one knows that Eglon has been killed. That's Moab. When you read in Genesis about where Moab came from, you read a sordid tale about Lot's daughters getting him drunk and sleeping with him. And one gets pregnant with Moab and the other with the beginning of the Ammonite tribe. That's who Moabites were to the Israelites, bastard children of incest. Imagine the Israelites telling this story over and over and over about that lot, that scum across the river, and who they are. Have we got it? Yeah. Elimelech and Naomi go to Moab out of desperation. They will starve if they stay in Bethlehem. And they settle, they have sons, and those sons marry women of Moab. We've got this interracial marriage going on in this family. And then the father and both sons die, and you're left with three women who have no husbands and no sons to look after them. What has Ruth stepped into? She is tied to a woman not of her own race, and she has no husband. She's barren, 10 years married, and no children. She's in trouble. Now, for Naomi, the path forward is really obvious. Go home. And Ruth and her sister-in-law should go back to their Moabite homes and be supported by their own families. But no one's going to care for Naomi in Moab. It's best she just go home to Bethlehem, where by now the famine's over and the food's back on the table, and she has family and friends to welcome her. She has nothing in Moab, and she sees herself as nothing good for her daughters-in-law. Unprotected, unsupported, despised, poor, endangered. Ruth chooses to go to a land where she will be those things. She will be the widow, the childless, filthy Moabite. And that's what she chooses. Unprotected, unsupported, despised, poor, endangered. Why? This is where we need two Hebrew words, chesed and chutzpah. They're really fun words to do, like with a in the back of the throat. So you're all on mute. Just have a go at saying chesed and chutzpah, and then just wipe your screen afterwards. Loosely, you can translate chesed and chutzpah to loyalty and courage. Ruth was both soft and strong. Now, it's hay fever season at the moment. For me, that's just awful. And it's really important that my choice of tissues is critical. When I blow my nose, I really blow. It's possible for me to leave tissues just like in a shower of snow-like scraps that have kind of fallen all around the place. These tissues have to be strong. But because it's hay fever, the frequency with which I blow my nose is high, and it can get really rough on the skin. So soft, moisturized tissues are heaven. Gee, I sound privileged, don't I? Sorry. And this is a big demand on tissues. Be both soft and strong. Soft enough to care gently for my nose, and strong enough to take the blasts and not disintegrate. I think Ruth was like the best tissues. She was soft enough to care and strong enough to take the burden of that care. Chesed and chutzpah, loyalty and courage. Chesed is a key word in the book of Ruth. It keeps on getting used. We don't have a good English word for it because it's a unique concept. Sometimes the Bible will call it loving kindness or compassion or commitment or mercy. There are three aspects of Hesed. The first is that someone is in need of something that they can't provide for themselves to survive. It's an essential thing like food or shelter. Without it, they will perish. The second thing is that the person who is showing chesed is uniquely placed at that time to give that essential thing. No one else has that resource. It's up to that person to give it. It's really up to them. And the third thing is that this is given in the context of a relationship that is loving and good. It's not like a random act of kindness to a stranger. It's not given as forgiveness for a wrong. It's a gift that shows that the relationship is good and loving and functional and committed. This is chesed. And Naomi says to Ruth and Orpah, may God show you his chesed as you have shown chesed to your husbands and to me. Naomi shows us that this quality of Hesed is exactly what we experience in God. In a covenant relationship with God, we find ourselves with deep needs that we can't fill. And God, the one who is uniquely placed to provide, shows us extraordinary kindness. It's mercy and love and commitment and loyalty that is in God's nature. And while Naomi can't claim it for herself, she knows God has done it in the past and prays it for her beloved daughters in law. Why does Ruth show chesed? Because she's experienced it in Naomi's God, Yahweh. It is the loving kindness of God that empowers us to be extraordinarily soft and strong to others. How are you at being loyal? I'm going to try and tell a joke now. I need to tell people this because sometimes it doesn't come out terribly funny. So get ready to go, ha ha ha. Thank you. During a high school concert, father to the people sitting around him, hey, that's my son. And the boy had been playing this trumpet solo absolutely perfectly right up to that point, and then fluffed some notes and made mistakes. Well, said the father, they all look alike from back here. Hopefully, you can be loyal to the ones that you love, even when they're not so great. Ruth was married to a man who had a lovely mum. Her name meant pleasant. But now at this point, she is bitter and older and grumpier and difficult to be with. Are you good at being kind when the person that you're meant to be loyal to is difficult? The other thing about chesed is that it's not compulsory. It's extraordinary. It's above and beyond. Orpah was a good daughter-in-law. She was willing to stick with Naomi until she was urged to go. She was crying at the crossroads too. There's nothing wrong with Orpah's choice. She was upstanding. She was within her rights. She was caring and she fulfilled her obligations. But Ruth went way beyond the call of duty. She was extraordinary, and that is chesed. But in order to be extraordinary, you need courage. Loyalty is the decision to enter into something that is undesirable for the sake of someone else. You are valuing that person over your own comfort, your own safety, your own status, your own gain. Ruth is saying in her actions, you are worth all of the difficulty that is ahead of me in taking this path. Ruth says, I don't care where I live as long as it's with you. I don't care where we go as long as it's with you. I don't care who is our community. I'm a filthy Moabite to them. I'll still love them as long as it's with you. I will stay with you until I die. Friends, that takes courage. Another joke. In the Moscow circus, a beautiful woman, lion tamer, would have a fierce lion come to her really meekly and put his paws on her shoulders and nuzzle her with affection. And the crowd thundered its approval and was like just amazed, except for one man who declared, what's so great about that? Anyone can do that. And the ringmaster challenged him. Well, would you like to try it? And the man replied, sure, first just get that lion out of there. Courage is the quality that says, I will get into the ring with the lion. How is your courage these days? Are you able to deliberately step into the discomfort? Are you able to defy expectation? Do you have the courage to self-sacrifice and love unconditionally? Ruth experienced God's chesed, and she then showed chesed to Naomi. God's kindness gave her the courage and the loyalty to be that extraordinary woman of character. And this extraordinary woman of character, in turn, was part of Naomi's transformation. In chapter 1, when we meet Naomi, she is bitter. But as we progress through this story, you'll see that the chesed that Ruth shows demonstrates the chesed of God to Naomi, and this transforms her into a woman of joy and gratitude. Loyalty and courage are worth it. They are transformational. So what do we do with this story? Well, first we can consider who has been courageously loyal in our lives. Who has shown us loving kindness and met a need in our lives when we couldn't meet it ourselves? This week, I urge you to thank God for them. And then thank them in person too. Tell them the impact that they have made in your life. The second thing is for us to consider, who is it that needs me to show God's chesed this week? Is there someone with a need that I am uniquely placed to fulfill? Is there someone who needs my loyalty, even if it costs me? Is there someone who needs me to say, I think you're worth it. You're worth my attention and time and resources and care. How can I be kind? Oh, I'm sorry. Here I am encouraging you to have extraordinary kindness and courage in a time where we are all running on empty. We're all tired. We're all feeling scarcity in many ways. The beauty of worship at South Yarra is that you're always ultimately directed to the source of our strength, the cross and resurrection of Christ, the feeding of communion. And this is a time to remember the chesed of Christ, those three elements: who is uniquely placed, the only one who can, to give us what we desperately need and can't do for ourselves, not as a random act of kindness, but as a sign of the deep commitment that God has to us. Those three things of chesed are found at this table and at the foot of the cross. Christ's soft but strong love. A body broken, yet resurrected. A violent death, but a lamb that made no protest. Soft broken bread, washed down with a hearty strong wine. A God of loving kindness and a human of great courage. This loving kindness is unexpected, undeserved, beyond what any reasonable person would do, and it's transformational. We receive the love of God, and it turns us from the bitterness of a Naomi into a new person. If you're struggling to find chesed and chutzpah in yourself, let the chesed and chutzpah of Christ transform you. How can we be a Ruth? Receive Yahweh's chesed. Enter into God's grace. Accept the self-emptying gift of Christ. And being fed by Christ, you can then answer the commission of Christ. You can answer him, where you go, I will go. Because you live, I live. Your people are my people. And you, Jesus Christ, are my God. Amen.